Hi, welcome to Charlotte So Natural, and I'm Charlotte, and welcome to whatever day this is. Again, we seem to have missed our Wisdom Wednesday small window, and so now we're on Thursday, and we are calling this terrific Thursday. We're calling this Thoughtful Thursday. Thoughtful Thursday. I was thinking a technical Thursday or Tuesday, but anyway, this is a technical day. We are technically trying to get ready to reopen the store to customers, which is happening Monday, June 1st. So we look forward to seeing you then, and maybe we'll be back on a better schedule. The staff will be knowing what day it is. Anyway, we showed you this quilt sometime in the last couple of weeks. Is in progress. It started with a panel, this beautiful eagle panel, and then started adding borders. And so this is a strip of red fabric, this is a strip of blue fabric, and now this is a printed stripe. So to border this all the way around, and the patchwork, this needed to be mitered. So Robin had to learn how to do the mitering. So I thought, well, that's a good tip to share with you. So I'm going to, it's a beautiful job too, it just came out beautiful. And so I want you to see an easy way to practice on this, and that is just to find a simple panel like she had there, but she embellished and made some blocks. But you could do this just with this simple friendship panel. It's very nice. It's 36 inches by 45, and actually I trimmed it down. I trimmed it down a little bit so that this was even with the sides. And that's about all the trimming I did. Otherwise, this is all printed. So I'm sewing, this fabric line has a matching border stripe. So I cut 4 strips of the border stripe out of, here it is, Kirsten. There we go. Okay, so that is the border stripe. So I cut them out of the length of fabric that is the longest here. So in this case, it was 45 inches. I measured how much I wanted to cut the stripe in width, and that's about 5.5 inches. And so I had to add the center of the panel, 5.5 inches here and 5.5 inches there, in order to be able to miter these corners. So that came out to be just approximately 1 yard and 5/8. So that's what I cut off. Then I cut my 4 identical strips of fabric. And they are just identical. I found the exact same place to cut them, and they're all 4 the same length, and they're the same exact width. Then I need to mark my corners here. So this is the wrong side, and I'm going to use the friction pen. Remember, we talked about the friction pen. That's the one that erases with the heat or the iron. And boy, a friend of mine bought one of these recently, and she called me and she goes, why would a quilter ever put this in their pocket? Why does this have a pocket clip on it? And oh, by the way, how do you get it out? Like, because you push and push on this and the pen doesn't come out. And actually, that's how you release the pen. We decided it might be been designed by a guy. But anyway, that all aside. So here is my friction pen that erases with an iron. And I want to mark a perfect 1/4 inch from both sides in this corner. So this is the wonderful Marty Michelle template. This is the Deluxe Corner Trimmer and Hand Piecing Aid. You can see there's a square in the center there. That's the 90 degrees that I need. So I can take this and I can just line this up. Let's put it on the dark so we can see it. I can just line that right up there, and there's a hole drilled to take my pen, and now I know that that is a 1/4 inch from all sides. You know, if you have some other, that's the Marty Michelle hand piecer. She also has a set N, which you might already own, and that's the Perfect Patchwork templates for the mini geometrics, and those also come with holes drilled in the corners. So here is the square. And I could do the same thing with that. I could just take that over. I could lay that on the corner, put my pen through the corner, and have that mark, oops, right where I need it. The last thing that I have in my tool kit is the Creative Grids non-slip quick trim and circle ruler, and this also has holes drilled in it, so it's very easy to use one of the holes here and poke it through. You can measure the 1/4 inch. That hole is a 1/4 of an inch here and a 1/4 of an inch there, so I just line that up. I put in my pen and it marks the hole right there. So you might already have a tool with a hole in it. That's what you need, that you can measure the 1/4 of an inch from. So once we have that, we're going to measure and make sure that these two pieces that are going on the two sides are exactly the same length. I measured and found the center. I actually folded it in half, found the center of the panel on both sides, and then I found the center of these two strips, and I marked that. And I paid attention to my motif in the border strip. It's kind of a subtle flower, but I thought I'm going to pay attention so that I have those across from each other. And then I pin that to that. Now I'm pinning from this side so that I'm looking at my side with my, here's my center marked, here is my 1/4 inch marked, and I'm going to lay that perfectly flat. The nice thing about working with a stripe border print is it is on the lengthwise grain, so it's not stretching. It's very nice. So once I have that, I'm going to mark that. I'm going to pin it right to that corner there. So I see where that corner mark is. That's where I'm going to sew. Not beyond it, but right from that all the way down. So once I have these two sewn, I'm going to make sure that I have the same exact length on this side and do the same thing over here. And when I start sewing here, I don't backstitch. I make the stitches, I don't know if you can tell that, Kirsten, but I make the stitches very, very tiny at first and then just make them longer, and that's going to work. So I'm not stitching to the end of the fabric. I'm just stitching from the hole, the dot that I made through the hole, or whatever mark you make that's a 1/4 of an inch from the end, and I sew that. Then when I go to do the same thing on the next one, again I mark the center of this and matched it up with my border stripe. Then again I start right here. Now I just keep everything clear. You just pull everything away, pull it back, and I just start stitching right there. There's no back stitching. I'm stitching a very tiny stitch length, and then I gradually let it be normal length, and you can see then I just sew the whole thing. I come down here before I get to my dot. I start making my stitch length shorter, and then my last 1/2 inch is made with very short stitches, and then I stop. Then I can just turn it and keep going like that. So that's how you're going to sew it. You're not going to sew to the end. You're going to not sew into the seam allowance. You're just going to sew dot to dot, dot to dot to dot to dot. And the most important thing is to make sure that your opposite sides are the exact same length. So once that's all sewn, we're going to take these, and you can see that when you have that all together, you can see how this is going to be, whoops, one that isn't sewn, catching on the table. So you can see how these have to, why these have to be longer, because these are, now they're sewn, and now they have to be longer so that we can get that diagonal there. So what I'll do is I know from experience that I like to start sewing at the corner. So I'm going to flip what's on my right to my left so that I have that side up that I want to be sewing. And I'm just going to fuss with this until I have it absolutely smooth on top of itself. And so here's my stitching, and it's curling back. That's what's supposed to do, so that I have that like that. This comes out, and that's your perfect 45-degree angle. This is all lined up, perfect. And now I can just take a ruler like so, a straight edge, And this is going to be my stitching line because I just want to continue that fold line. I want that to be my stitching line, so I'm going to take my friction pen again. I'm going to push this back so I can see where that stitching ends, and there it is right there. And you can mark that. If it's hard for you to see, you can mark that with a black dot, and that is an extension of this line right here. And now I'm going to just make sure that that is true. And I've drawn my line. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is, before I actually pin that, I'm going to fold this back and see, hey look, I'm pretty darn close. That's great. So as long as this stays smooth, now I'm going to pin this. And again, I'm not going to stitch anywhere except starting putting my needle in at that dot, have little tiny stitches, start sewing. I'm going to sew the whole length of this. Whoops. If I was doing this at home, I wouldn't have as many variety of pins as this store pin cushion gets. And you can see that's going to be good. You can check yourself. This is what's going to be cut off, but you can check and see. It's going to look exactly the same on the other side. So we're going to stitch that. I do not back stitch. I pick up my needle and I move backwards and then I stitch forward again. If you back stitch, it kind of adds too much bulk to it. So once you have that done, it's stitched again, and it looks like this on the right side, and it is perfectly smooth and square. Let's see if I can get that laid out for you. You can see that that corner presses just perfectly smooth because there's no stitching going beyond that corner. You can trim this with a rotary cutter or with a scissors. I like to press my mitered ones open and trim that to 1/4 of an inch, but you can see how we had to have some excess out there. Not this one is the shorter side, this is the longer side. And then you can just go around and you keep doing that. So we get to this one, you'll finish sewing this one. Again, you'll have the dot marked, and you're just going to sew dot. I'll finish sewing this side. I just left it open to show you. So you'll finish sewing, start from the dot, cut little stitches, sew the whole thing. This side, we're going to finish stitching. When we get to that dot, to about 1/2 inch away from the dot, we're going to shorten the stitch length and finish stitching that. Then when it's all stitched together, we're going to fold it to get our angle, and it's perfect. We're going to use our ruler to draw our line. That's our stitching line. We're going to draw the stitching line. I don't cut anything here, so I stitch it, then I'm going to open it up. Now, if for some reason you see there is a problem at this point, remember we haven't cut anything off. So you can still come back and make your repairs. You really shouldn't have any to make if you've done it all perfectly. Sometimes things happen though. So not the least of which is that you might discover that you sewed one of these strips on the wrong side. Guess how I know that one? Anyway, but luckily we haven't trimmed anything, so I could just unstitch it, turn it around, come back, do the same thing again, and do it to all 4 corners, and we have like a really charming friendship. I'd like this as a lap quilt. You could do it on the wall, but it's large enough for a lap quilt. We were just talking about friends and family members we know who are in various facilities where they have been really idle. We think we've been idle with the stay-at-home. But so this would be a wonderful gift for somebody to share, that a friend, and to let them know that we're still thinking of them. So anyway, have a great afternoon. Thanks for joining me. Have fun mitering.